It's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to another edition of Q&A with the coach. Our friend Dinnan Freeman writes in a few questions. He says, first, do attributes like strength, response times, body awareness, or strength the second time matter when doing light sparring? Or is it almost all about technique? Well, yes, of course it matters. Technique, as I say all the time on this channel, is not just about where to put your hands and feet, how to move into a certain shape or position. Strength is technique. Kinesthetic bodily awareness is technique. What else did you mention? Response times. Yes, timing is technique. That's all part of your technique. So that absolutely carries into light sparring. Let's talk about strength for a minute. Because if you're doing light sparring, obviously you're not going to use a great deal of strength to inject power into the punches to try to injure your training partners. Right? So where does the strength come in? The strength comes in control. A lot of people have a very difficult time controlling kicks, especially head kicks, when they spar, and they will accidentally injure or knock out their training partners. How do you avoid that? How do you pull the kicks? Well, that takes a great deal of strength and coordination and control over your hip flexors and your glutes and your core, your abdominal muscles. And if you lack that strength, it's going to be very difficult to pull your kicks and do light sparring in the first place. Light sparring is very, very technical when done correctly. There's bad light sparring and there's good light sparring. The good light sparring is very much positionally the same as hard sparring. The difference being, in the light sparring, you pull the punches and you pull the kicks. You take the edge off of it, right? But there's more to this question. Dinnan goes on to say, if you're sparring with less athletic people than you, and you don't have people around you that are faster, stronger, or more capable than you, do you run the risk of thinking that you are a good technical fighter when you're just a better athlete than the people around you? Also, does the distinction matter, or is it perfectly valid to just be physically superior, and it doesn't matter if your technique breaks down at someone physically better than you if you're good enough? That it's unlikely to find someone like that. Anyway, love the channel and respect your opinions. Can't wait to hear your thoughts. Sorry, I didn't. Great question. Great question there. So, what if you only have less experienced people to train with? What if your sparring partners are wimps? Yeah, you can potentially fall into that trap of being the big fish in the small pond and letting that get to your head and thinking, hey, I really am something. Pat on the back. Look, I can beat everybody in the room pretty handily. And that's a problem. That's a problem because the room, that little room you're training in, is not an accurate representation of the world, most likely. I would recommend visit as many gyms as you can. See what else the world has to offer. And it may shock and surprise and appall you to learn that some of these rooms are filled with killers. Some of these rooms are filled with a pretty mixed group. And some of these rooms are filled with wimps. Now, if you don't have that option to travel out there, to go to different gyms, to find tougher guys, okay, that's fine. Just understand the wise words of Mr. Miyagi from The Karate Kid, Part 1, who was a terrible karate teacher, but a great giver of life advice, where he was talking to Daniel LaRusso about how he, Mr. Miyagi, got beaten up by bullies as a kid, which shocked Daniel LaRusso, who could only see Mr. Miyagi as this untouchable karate master. And he said, but Mr. Miyagi, how did they beat you up? You knew karate. To which he said, hi, someone always knows more. Yes, someone always knows more than you. Someone's always bigger, stronger, more capable than you. And just because they're not in the room there with you doesn't mean you shouldn't be aware of that. You need to be aware of that. This is a problem that many coaches, I think, can become prey to. Because the coach often is the best guy in the room by leaps and bounds, because they have so much more experience. And I have seen some coaches, fueled by delusions of being able to beat up a bunch of white belts, being able to beat up a bunch of brand new guys off the street who don't know anything, being able to beat up a bunch of non-athletes with the constitution of old ladies. And they let that get to their heads, and then they turn into no-touch chi master cult leaders. And that's a problem. But I'm going to tell you something. The most valuable training partners you have are the guys you can squish, are the new guys, the guys who know a little bit but not as much as you, the guys who can hang in the ring without getting hurt too badly, but they can't really hang with you. Why is this important? Because these are the guys we can experiment on, if you will. No, you don't hurt them. In fact, you work very deliberately not to. Remember, light sparring. Control your punches. Pull your kicks. Don't try to put any power or damage into your strikes. Don't slam them on the takedowns. Don't crank on the submissions. But when you are working with these new guys, experiment. Try new things. Try different things. Give yourself challenges. And I'll show you a challenge right here. 2-on-1 sparring. These are two students who've been training with me for a matter of a few months. And one at a time, no problem. So I decided, you know what? Let's do 2 at a time. Grappling with 2 or more humans at the same time is quite difficult, even if they don't really know what they're doing. And even if you do. And man, that was a great challenge. The challenge was, they both attack. If they tap out, they sit out. Because again, tapping out is symbolic of, I'm dead, you got me, you killed me. So we roll for 5 minutes, I managed to tap out both of them, but afterwards, I had this epiphany, like, whoa. This got my mind, my heart, my body working at the same level as high-level competition. How interesting. And you don't have to do 2-on-1 sparring or anything silly like that. But be creative, be imaginative, give yourself structure and limitations to push yourself to learn regardless of who you're in the ring with. And maybe you're on the opposite side of the equation. Maybe you're the guy who sucks. Maybe you're the guy who's brand new. And all of your training partners are squishing you. All your training partners are better than you. You can't touch them. Okay. Go the opposite direction. Instead of giving yourself limitations to make it harder, give yourself very specific, simple, achievable goals to make it easier. In fact, when you give yourself goals, this is a drill we did in a boxing class I was teaching the other day. Before sparring, everybody in the room had to pick a goal, something very concrete and specific they were going to do. So, for example, my goal is to land 3 shovel hooks to the left side on the liver, boom, during this round. Somebody else had the goal of land a counterpunch with a right cross. Somebody else had the simple goal of just punch him in the face at least once. Okay, so what ended up happening, the students, they're doing these, and the purpose for this was twofold. One, to get them to work on achievable goals, to help them improve, but also to get them to learn how to read their opponents. Because when you can see what the other guy is working toward, you can see how to counter it. When you can see the future, you can plan for the future. So if you see that your opponent is trying to hit you with his left shovel hook in your liver, you can see the pathway to shut that down. So it's a twofold exercise, my friends. And there was a very mixed group in there. There was a couple of guys who were really good boxers. And a few people in there who are very, very green and raw and brand new. And it was a highly constructive lesson for everybody in the room. So structure your training in an intelligent way. Train smarter, not just harder. Thank you for watching. Now get out there and train.